Alright guys, skipping the intro again because your time is precious. This video is going to be building off the last video I had, which covered the 4 unfortunate truths of self-defense, what I call the 4 unfortunate truths. In that video, if you saw it, basically covered these 4 unfortunate truths, which are, in a self-defense situation, you are typically starting in the negative. 2, you're alone. 3, the bad guy chooses the environment. That's the how, the when, and the where. You don't get to choose that. And 4 is most martial arts tricks don't work on most bad guys. So this video is going to be building off of that. So if we assume those 4 truths, then what should we be training? As martial artists for self-defense, if we're talking self-defense here, and we want to be real and cut all the bull out, and I love a lot of what people call the bull. Kung Fu, Tai Chi, I've done it, I love it. But if we're cutting all that out and just talking about what works in the street, then we have to be talking about a very specific set and subset of defensive tactics. So what I'm going to go through here is what I see as the basic approach. You could call this a guideline. I'm not going to be showing you any specific techniques. I'm not going to be telling you exactly which martial arts you should be taking. What I am going to show you is a guideline that says if your martial art that you are taking or thinking about training in takes any of these things, the things I'm about to show, if they take them seriously, and if they really set out a curriculum to ingrain these things, then my friend, you have a very effective self-defense art. You have your mechanism that you are building to defend yourself is accurate to the real world that we live in. Okay? One last thing before we get started. When I started this channel, I had a lot of friends who are in marketing and told me that if I'm going to make a channel like this, you have to have a brand. So I do a lot of different things. I'm a writer, I'm a martial artist, I'm a comic book artist, and so I draw sequential art. And they said, you got to pick one of those things. And I said, well, it's my channel, I can do what I want. So while I'm talking about martial arts, I will occasionally give you a book recommendation. They will not be my books. These are books written by other people, and comic books and mangas and things like that. They'll be very brief. They're not reviews. I just like to read, and I want to share my love of reading with others. These will be brief 10, 20-second little book recommendations, and we'll continue on. And I'm just going to pepper them in probably near the end of the video if you're interested. With that out of the way, let's get to it. The first thing I want to bring up is what I'm calling the hierarchy. This is the things that you are going to need to study, and that your martial art, or any martial arts you take now or in the future, they need to take seriously, and they need to have answers for these things so they can be considered, to me, considered an effective real-world self-defense, okay? And this is it. You can take a screenshot of this. I'm going to go through them one by one now. Number 1 is protect your head. You want to control the bad guy's head, either by holding it or hitting it, then strike with the big guns. The big guns are the elbows, knees, hammer fists, and headbutting. Most people are headhunters. You need to remember this. Most people are headhunters. I can honestly not think of that many times anyone threw a strike at my chest or my lower legs. Definitely the lower body. I can't think of one time it's ever happened. But they always swing for the head, and they always try to grab somewhere around the head, maybe grab your wrists. But in terms of striking, they're going for your head. So you need to protect your head while at times attacking theirs and controlling theirs. What I mean by control it is you grab them around the neck, you move them around, you push them around, either like a clinch, for those of you familiar with the clinch type movements that you would see in Muay Thai or any kind of controls like that. Number 2 is protect your body. Again, control his, that means the bad guy, control his body, either by holding it or hitting it, then strike with the big guns again. The big guns being elbows, knees, hammer fists, and headbutting if you can tolerate headbutting. Number 3 is control his base with yours. You want to control your balance and control his. You want to off-balance him with shin presses, trips, pushes, and shoves. These can be in any order. You might be better at pushing than you are at tripping. You might be better at shin presses than you are at shoves. But you need to learn some of these things so you can off-balance the opponent. You need to be able to push them around while delivering, you guessed it, the big guns. The elbows, the knees, hammer fists, so forth. And number 4, You do all of this through pummeling. So you need to learn how to protect your head, protect your body in those first few seconds, almost certainly. Then you go towards controlling his base with yours. And then you need to be able to understand how to do all of this through pummeling, because you must understand how pummeling works during an encounter and how all strikes and all grappling result from what happens there. What is pummeling? Some of you may never heard this term before, or you've heard it but didn't exactly know what it meant. Pummeling is that thing where someone comes in, is grabbing your wrists and maybe grabbing your bicep, doing a yoking maneuver. This is a yoke hand, and then this would be like yoking someone's elbow so they can't punch you. Like this is the bad guy's hand coming in here, and this is your hand coming in to yoke that elbow, to prevent that elbow from coming in to perform a strike. Someone grabbing your wrist and you knowing how to get out of that to reverse it and grab their wrist. Someone trying to swim under your arms to do underhooks. Someone trying to overwrap your arms. Someone trying to wrap up your head. This is all pummeling. Knowing how to move in that range. You can basically call it standing grappling. You're basically doing jiu-jitsu on your feet. You're grappling while standing up. That is the hierarchy, or that is the system or approach that I would say that I would want to know if a martial art, if I'm going for self-defense, I would want to know how they address those four things. Those four things must be addressed. Whether you're doing the Krav Maga or you're doing Taekwondo, what does that martial art do? Does it have pummeling? Some martial arts don't even really have pummeling. Taekwondo, they have some wrist grabs and stuff, but do they train it all the time? Where you're literally grabbing the person and you stay in that range and you stay there delivering knees and then having to defend against someone trying to deliver punches and knees to you while they have you grabbed. That's a type of sparring that very few martial arts even consider. Now let's talk about the big guns of striking, as I've called them, the big guns. These are 5 very basic principles that, if you recall my last video where I talked about you really want to focus on gross motor skills more than fine motor skills. Again, we're assuming you're fighting someone, 2 or 3 people or something, and it's in a situation where you didn't plan it, you're at home, and someone is coming at you, and it's horrible. Like they've got a knife or something. It's god-awful, right? And you want to be able to remember the big guns. Fortunately, the big guns are gross motor skills that have a lot of power without having to have a lot of training, honestly. I mean, now if you train them, they're even better. But let's go through them. The big guns are 1, elbows, 2, knees, 3, hammer fists / forearms. I combine these two because hammer fists, when they come in, one of the beauties of hammer fists, there's 3 things I love about hammer fists. 1, you can hit a wall with a hammer fist basically as hard as you want, and it's probably not going to do much damage, but trying to punch it straight can shatter your hands. There's a reason that boxers wear gloves and UFC fighters wear gloves, guys. It protects their knuckles. But hammer fists, I won't say they're 100% safe 100% of the time, but they are really they're tough. On most people, they're tough. 2, they deliver a tremendous amount of power. And 3, if you're trying to hit someone with a hammer fist, let's say that this is their head, and you want to hit them with the hammer fist, but they move their head, well, the forearm still hits them. Do you see what I'm saying? So the forearm is a thing that it's going to hit something. Those hammer fists and forearm motions, they're going to hit something. And I guess another little bonus I didn't think of to mention just now was if you improvise a weapon, or if you pick up something to defend yourself, like a club, or let's say someone breaks into your home and you have to grab an improvised weapon like the remote control to your TV. Well, that motion that you swing with, that you're going to be beating with, that is a hammer fist motion. Okay. Number 4 on the big guns is headbutts, and then you see I have in parentheses there, if you can. The reason I put that there is because some people that I've trained over the years don't like headbutts, even like they'll train it on the bag or something, or and they say it makes them dizzy. It stuns them. So I guess I'm blessed / cursed with a hard head, And so if you love or if you're okay with that kind of thing, then I mean, I love headbutts, but if you're not okay with that, then steer clear of headbutts. But they are big guns if you can use them. And the last big gun is non-ostentatious kicks. And then in parentheses there, I have almost always to the lower body. What do I mean? What does ostentatious mean? For those of you who don't know, ostentatious is a word that means that something in a very showy way, something that's maybe overly elaborate. So I use that term, they're non-ostentatious kicks, to mean kicks that are not like 360 kicks or butterfly kicks or even spinning back kicks, guys. And it's almost always to the lower body. Remember, if you saw my last video, you know I talked about you usually won't have the time or space to execute any kind of fancy crescent kick. Like I can do a pretty great crescent kick. I love it, but I do it only in sparring. And even then, it's sort of a risk because we're playing a game in sparring. When we're sparring, it's almost like a fighting game, like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, in that we know that there's two fighters here, and we have a certain set of moves that we can do. There's only so many moves, right? And we are agreeing to do that in sparring. We're not going to do anything crazy like pull a knife out or suddenly jump my sparring partner with 5 extra opponents. He knows that it's me versus him, and we've got gloves on, we've got mouthpieces. You can take some risky maneuvers. I mean, usually the sparring floor is usually kind of padded. You can take some risky maneuvers in that environment. On the street, I don't recommend doing any kind of ostentatious kicks. So what do I mean by non-ostentatious kicks? Well, a low kick to the inside of the thigh, a very low kick from behind or from the side if you're kind of beside the opponent, to the shin, like with your toe, if you're wearing like a shoe that has a pretty strong toe, kicking at the ankle can be effective. They're almost always to the lower body. The higher that you kick on the body, the easier it is for you to be knocked over or for them to grab your foot. Because it's you kick, and if you try to kick to the head, even if you're great at kicking to the head, guys, that's a long journey to put your foot back on the ground, that if you don't hit and knock them out, then they can just shove you over. So those are what we're talking about when I mentioned the 5 sort of big guns here in combat. So now when we look back at that hierarchy, you see there, protect your head, you control his, while trying to deliver big guns. You see protect your body. You're trying to protect your body from strikes and from him grabbing you, like underhooks under your arm or overwrapping your arm and holding you in place. You're trying to counter that while also delivering the big guns. You're trying to control his base, knocking him off balance with shin presses, hip bumps, and low kicks, low non-ostentatious kicks. Number 4 is doing all of this through pummeling. I'm probably going to do a video on pummeling at some point for those of you who don't understand exactly how that, maybe you've seen it done in sports, but you don't, maybe you've watched some videos of Eric Paulson and you see him, but maybe you don't really necessarily see what I mean by he does a pretty good job, an excellent job of talking about how to use it in the street. So you can look at those videos. I'm probably going to do a video at some point to sort of show what I mean, though, about continuously delivering big guns while pummeling. This is key. When you're in a scrap, people just get grabby and they swing for your head and they try to grab you again and try to swing for your head. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the grab and sort of piston or jackhammer motion. That's where someone reaches out and grabs your shirt, right? And they lock you at a distance. They lock their arm out and then they start wailing on you, pistoning at you. They do this to keep you at range. They hide behind their own arm. It's like a natural thing you learned in school. I mean, if you ever had a bully or someone pick on you at school, a lot of people just kind of learned that. It's just a thing where you grab someone and you hold them at length. And you hold them, and that's a thing that pummeling is going to help you with. As these very common kind of ways of fighting that bad guys just resort to. And the last thing I'm going to talk to is more of a philosophy. This is something that has to happen in the mind, but I've broken it down here from what I've read from various books and what I've seen in experience, and I've had in my own experiences, and I've spoken to with other law enforcement agents, people who were either current or former Marines, Navy SEALs that I've trained, that were students of mine when I taught at the Atlanta Martial Arts Center. It has to do with relentlessness, and it's sort of a thought process that I've come up with that and I'm going to put it up on the screen here so you guys can see it. And this is how to be relentless. And more, I'm putting this up here more to discuss what your martial art, if you're thinking about looking for a martial art or wondering if the martial art you're training now, do they address this at all? Do they address this mindset at all? And I'm going to use some terminology here that I kind of invented and borrowed to make my point. So number one on how to be relentless, initiative. Number one is initiative. You want to gain it back fast, despite the fact that the bad guy started it. What do I mean by that? I use this word initiative, and I'm borrowing it for those of you who've played Dungeons and Dragons or other role-playing games. There's a term called initiative, and it's like I thought it was kind of appropriate because when you roll for initiative in those games, whoever has the highest die roll, they go first. And but then in later rounds, you can roll the dice again to see if you get the higher initiative so that you can go again. This is called having the initiative. You go first. You are initiating. Now, the bad guy, as I said in my first video, is pretty much always the one who initiated. If you're initiating, you're probably the bad guy, which is bad. Don't do that. Don't go around starting fights for no reason. But if they are coming after you, they initiated, and you've got to get some of that initiative back. You've got to do something. You've got to smother their hits when they're coming in. You've got to do something about getting there with pummeling. You've got to get in there and control them in the tie, in the clinch, or something to then go on the offensive. If you remember what I said in my last video about those first few seconds where you want to cover, recover, defend, and then you can attack in those first few seconds. Well, that's how you get the initiative back, guys. Number two is momentum. What do I mean by momentum? Momentum comes from when you score a hit or any sort of small victory in the fight, and you build on that success. When you score such a victory and gain an advantage, whatever that is, maybe he slipped and fell, maybe you've tipped him over and he's about to fall, maybe you landed a good hammer fist across his temple and he's stunned for a moment. So you've gained the advantage. When that happens, you want to attack and or run away or acquire an asset that could be an improvised weapon or something quickly in order to look for an escape, if that is your goal. I need to stress again, if it's your goal. If your goal is to escape, then you use that moment to, go run into your house and lock the door or get to your car or whatever you got to do. But then number three is threat. What do I mean by threat? Well, this is something to be relentless, you need to be aware of threat, which is you watch for the opponent's attempt to gain back the initiative, which they will, or to threaten your safety, and you must deny them. What do I mean by deny? Well, the example I gave before is someone's about to throw a punch, and you're in there in the clinch or in pummeling range, and you've got a yoke grip that you move in to stop them at the elbow before they can throw that punch, and they can't make that punch happen because you are smothering that. You are denying them that threat. You need to be in there and constantly aggravating them. If you are in a terrible situation where someone is not relenting and you need to be relentless in order to stop them, you go until you're safe. You go into you're safe, and you're trying to smother this. If the guy ends up, you exhaust him because he gasses out because you have smothered all his attempts to hit you. Well, good job. He falls over sweating and huffing and puffing, and you don't have to hit him anymore. But you have to be relentless in smothering his attacks. The next thing, as I say, assets. Always be looking for a way to bring assets into a fight to your advantage. Assets can literally be, use your imagination. Jason Bourne movies, he always improvises like a little weapon, or he uses a towel to defend himself. An asset could be literally just an open door, and you run through it and close it and lock it. So now the bad guy can't reach you. That's an asset. The number 5, inflict. This I bring this. If you, I must stress this. Inflict. If you are utterly alone, and you are outclassed, meaning this person is bigger and stronger, or there's more of them than you, and they've got weapons, or they've made it clear that they mean to do you permanent harm, and this is life or death, then you must inflict injury to sap their will to fight. You can't just do a little flourish. You can't do a spinning, you are spinning back kick and then do this like this cool pose or something, and you can't, those people who train those martial arts where they use energy to shut you down from across the room, that kind of stuff. Or even just a simple joint lock. Joint locks can work, don't get me wrong. I've trained a lot of them, and they're actually very handy, and they come in play in pummeling a lot. But you need to be willing to inflict some kind of serious with those, what I called before, the big guns, elbows, things like that, using your gross motor skills, because it saps their will. If you can put an elbow across someone's eye or on the side of their temple, those kind of things is what, I'm only bringing this up if you are interested in looking at martial arts from a self-defense perspective, a realistic, not what a movie might have shown you and not what you wish would work, but if you're an actual real approach to self-defense. The last one is acceptance. You accept the fact that you will most likely get hurt in this exchange. Those 6, that pretty much speaks for itself. Those 6 things there: initiative, momentum, threat, assets, inflict, and acceptance. You can screenshot that. It's just something I came up with that I've noticed that from books I've read about fear. Some of you have read books like The Gift of Fear, things like that. Those 6 things seem to be the key to, if you're going to approach a martial art from a strictly self-defense. I am defending myself against a nightmare. I don't want the nightmare to happen. I want it to end. I want to end it fast. I want to get out of here and be safe. I want to be able to run away from the bad guy. I want to be able to live another day. Well, relentlessness is a key in the fight, and your martial art that you are potentially training or looking to train in needs to address how to get, like for instance, that number 2 there, momentum. How do you follow up after you've scored a successful hit, or you've done something, you've gained an advantage? Initiative. How do you get the initiative back if you're behind time? As my instructor Alan Baker always calls it, behind time. By the way, check out his channel, Alan Baker, and he's done some great stuff on his own channel, and Kevin Lee on his channel. I trained with Kevin many, many years ago with Alan, and Alan is big, and you can see his stuff where he talks about CTAC, or Civilian Tactical, a system that he's been developing, and it is about being behind time. A lot of it is like how you react to being behind time. Well, that's initiative there. That's that number 1 in being relentless. Does your martial art deal with assets? That number 4 there, assets. How do I bring assets into a fight? How do I use them, and how do I create a mindset for looking for them? Acceptance. Does your martial art pretend that you will never get hurt if you just do these moves, or does your martial art accept? Do you accept that this exchange is going to result in probably some injury? At least a little bit of pain on, some cuts and scrapes and bruises on your side. And I want to reiterate, I'm only bringing all this up from the perspective of the worst nightmare. Not if you're at Thanksgiving dinner and your uncle is a little drunk, he's been drinking too much, and he just says some bad words and, like, I don't know, throws the Thanksgiving turkey across the kitchen, and he's just being stupid. Obviously, you're just, you don't need to know how to fight 100 ninjas to be able to, some simple moves can guide him out the door. You don't have to, be looking for assets, and looking for threat and inflict injury on your uncle, who's just being kind of a dork at and he's drunk. He's been drinking too much. This is I'm talking strictly about combat and and defending yourself in that ultimate nightmare. Having said all that, I'm going to recommend a comic book here that I've been reading for a while now called Something is Killing the Children. That sounds bad, and it is a horror, but it's also like really cool, and that it's got some great art. There's a main character chick here who's really good at fighting. She has like machetes and chainsaws. She fights with guns, and there's these monsters that have like class. They have classes like Class E7 monster, Class S type monster, and her name's Erica Slaughter, and the artwork is pretty gruesome at times, but it's really cool in how she fights off the monsters. And if you just like that kind of monster hunting kind of thing, then I highly recommend the book. It's called Something is Killing the Children. And it's out there now. Again, I'm not promoting this for anyone. I just like books and reading, and I'm just promoting them. I will now recommend All Systems Red in the Murderbot series. This is a great series of books, guys. They're short. You can see how short they are. You can read this. Literally, I think I read this in a few hours. Long story short, it's about a robot that kind of becomes self-aware in this future where robots are everywhere, and it decides it wants to do its own thing, and it wants to do nothing but like watch future, like the TV shows of the future, and it basically goes around and has these little mini adventures, and it refers to itself in its head as Murderbot because it was designed to kill, but it's decided to try to not do that. It's by Martha Wells. The first book, like I said, is called All Systems Red. As you see there, it is a Hugo and Nebula Award winner. I've been burning through this series. It's actually my second time going through it. I think they're up to book 5 now. I've got them all over here. Maybe they're book 6 or 7 now. I don't even know. So that's it from me, guys. Tell me what you thought. If my presentation made sense to you. If it didn't, maybe I misspoke somewhere. Maybe you think I left something out. Maybe you think I'm totally off base. Maybe some of the things I said contradicts what you feel, or I was unclear about something. I'm just started this channel up. I'm trying to get my thoughts together on it, on everything that I want it to be and things I want to do. So until next time, guys, have a good one.